Welcome back, everyone, to the Hey Alexa podcast, where curiosity is the currency of every conversation. Today, I get to sit down with someone who lives and breathes leadership, not just as a title, but as a human practice. My guest is Shawn Richards, founder of Blue Sky Business Consulting. Hello. He's a best-selling author, host of the long-running Team Engagement podcast, and a leadership development expert who has helped countless leaders discover what makes them effective, confident, and uniquely impactful. Shawn's work is grounded in a simple but powerful belief that leadership is about people. I agree. And the way he brings that to life is through a proprietary system he developed to help leaders identify their leadership signature, the unique blend of strengths, style, and presence that explains why they lead the way they do and how they lead even better. With more than 450 leadership interviews, 20 plus years of business experience, and a holistic approach to team performance, he brings clarity, structure, and humanity to the messy world of leadership. Welcome to the show, Shawn.
Thank you, Alexa. It's exciting to be here.
I am excited you're here as well. And I like to usually kick off with the human behind the resume. So before the frameworks, the certifications, and the hundreds of interviews, who was Shawn, and what early experiences do you think shaped the way you think about leadership and people?
It's a great question. For me, the leadership journey began when I was in college and was working
Mhm.
a little part-time job and received a promotion, which is always exciting. You just like to be promoted. And I was the team leader and received some advice that was meant to be encouraging, but I have since realized it was probably not the way that it should be done. They were very
Mhm.
complimentary. They just said, Shawn, we want everybody on the team to be just like you because you're such a great worker, employee, or whatever. Again, very complimentary. And I'm an
Mhm.
older guy, so this is back in the 90s, early 90s. And so I took that to heart. And so I tried to make everybody on the team like me. And that doesn't work. So
Yeah.
it can really, people think differently, they behave differently, or they respond differently to different situations. Not a good idea to try and figure out how to make everybody else like you. And so
Mhm.
it wasn't right away that I dove into leadership development as a career. It just sort of evolved that way over the next 20 to 30 years because there is a need. There is a big need out there. The one thing, and I could throw out all sorts of numbers of different kinds of research that's been done
Mhm.
about leadership. And so I've become very passionate about it because people are involved, whether it's the
Mhm.
leader or the follower or the team members, the colleagues, whatever term you want to use. We're dealing with people here, and people are important. So
Mhm.
leadership is important.
100%. 100%. I think that tapers into your leadership signature system that you developed. It's a blueprint that helps make leaders effective. And what inspires you to create a system like that? Was there a point in your career? I'm assuming it was the one you just described where you realized leaders didn't actually understand what made them great.
That's exactly it. Yeah, you've described it very well. What I've discovered, and there's been a lot of research around this, I'll throw out that I am a Gallup certified strengths coach, and I
Ooh,
kind of channel that into
yeah.
the leadership. And so, for those who may not be familiar with Gallup, you've probably heard of Gallup polls. A lot of research. Gallup does a lot of research, but what a
Mhm.
lot of people don't know, especially outside of the leadership community, they may not realize this, but they have several assessments. The most popular and famous one that people know about is the Strengths Finder
Yep.
or Clifton Strengths Assessment. And I took it about, oh boy, it's been about 8, 9 years ago when I took it myself. And it was in a sense a game changer for me because I started realizing that a lot of the things that I did naturally as a person were just not how other people would think. And
Mhm.
that's what really started making me think, okay, this is good for people. This is for everybody to understand each other in any kind of a group dynamic. I started thinking, what about leadership? And they have some great materials on leaders and leadership. So I started developing a more comprehensive system that
Mhm.
includes the Clifton Strengths Assessment, but several other assessments as well to help a leader really understand who they are, how they best lead. And that's what I call the leadership signature. And it's really designed to help an individual understand how they lead best because leadership development, from my perspective, over the decades that I've been involved at some level with leadership,
Mhm.
it's primarily treated as a one size fits all approach. Okay,
Exactly.
do this, you'll be a great leader. Who do you admire as a leader? And that's okay to look at other leaders and say, I admire this or that about him or her. But We also need to look within. We need to
Bring
look
your own
within
flavor
ourselves.
to the
Yes,
table.
yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. What do you do to
Yeah.
contribute in a meaningful way? So that's a long-winded answer to your
I
short
love it. I
question.
love it. No, it makes a lot of sense. Do you ever come up against people that are like, oh, it's like a pseudoscience, or I don't know about that. Why should I invest time in something like that? And they kind of shrug it off. What do you think is, what are they up against that's more of a resistance towards that?
Sometimes we tend to oversimplify things, and
Hmm.
I think for my generation, I'm a Gen Xer, and we did take a kind of a one size fits all approach to a lot
Hmm.
of things. But these ongoing generations, the millennials, now the Gen Z are full on in, and now we're around the corner, we're seeing the Gen Alphas.
Hmm.
And what we're seeing is that they approach things very differently. They want to be viewed as an individual, they want to be viewed as a human.
Hmm.
And we can't just take the same approach in leadership or in any kind of a group dynamic by just assuming that everyone
Hmm.
is roughly the same. And okay, just treat this person this way, treat this person, treat them all the same. Here's conflict resolution. Here's how you do it. It'll work. We have to be a little bit careful about that. Of course, there are some skills that are universal,
Hmm.
but at the bottom of it, at the foundational piece, we have to remember that we're dealing with individuals that have a different approach and a different way of thinking, a different background, a different perspective. And so having this more scientific approach helps to balance out the guesswork
Hmm.
with specific things that we can understand. It's not going to answer all the questions. No assessment, no single assessment, no group of assessments are ever going to do that, but it gives us a really good head start to help us understand ourselves and others, and sometimes even why we think the way we think and why we
Yeah.
do the way we do.
100%. What would you find usually shifts then when someone finally understands their strengths that they've unconsciously been leading from?
I've had two different kinds of experiences, and they are both really fun for me. It's part of the reason why I love what I do, because it's fun to see what I call the light bulb. When the
Yeah.
light bulb comes on and they go, oh, this is why I approach things a certain way, and this is why maybe my spouse approaches it a different
Yeah,
way, or
exactly.
my colleague, or whatever it is. So that's kind of the first one, is just a more of a self-realization. But even the second one, which is certainly there are people that feel like, well, I already knew that about myself. I already knew what my strengths were. I didn't need an assessment to tell me that.
Hmm.
What they sometimes lack, though, is the ability and the language to
Hmm.
communicate their strengths in a confident and clear way. So I'll use a quick example. My top strength is consistency. Well, it's a great word. I love it.
Hmm.
What does it really mean? I have the language now to describe it as a person. I'm an individual who puts equality very, very
Hmm.
high on my
Hmm.
list. I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to speak,
Hmm.
everybody is included. It also means I like systems. I like to create systems so that there's consistency in what we
Yeah.
do. And so, depending on a situation, if I were going into a job interview, or if I were having maybe a quarterly review with a boss or something like
Hmm.
that, I now have some language that I can use to help them understand me a little bit better and what drives the passion within. Yes, there are always going to be those
Hmm.
people that kind of feel like, oh, this is a soft skill. It's not that important.
Yeah.
It's not nearly as important as other things. You can't always avoid that, but I've had enough experience now to know that there is some substance to these concepts of assessments and understanding your strengths, and really to start identifying the strengths of other people. Both of those are really important and really powerful.
Totally. They're very intrinsic. And well, you've interviewed over, you said 450 plus leaders on your podcast, which gives you a rare perspective on patterns. What qualities do you see in leaders and who consistently elevates the people around them?
It's a great question. There are so many people. What I have found is that there is no monopoly
Hmm.
on how to develop others. There are some different things that different people will do,
Hmm.
but the people that are most successful, it doesn't matter the industry. They could be former military, they could be former executives, they could be middle management. The key to all of them is that they seem to have an invested desire to learn about people. And they don't necessarily have to be completely drawn in
Hmm.
on every detail of another person's life. I'll give you a simple example. And Steve Jobs is probably the pinnacle example of
Yeah.
this, of a visionary leader who has great vision, great ideas, and knows how to kind of move that direction. He's not necessarily the one, though, that is going to get to know the people on an
Yeah.
individual basis and really help develop them. He's more of a visionary thinker. And so that doesn't mean he's not a good leader. That means he's
Mhm.
a visionary type of leader. Someone else maybe, and this is where I tend to be a little bit more
Mhm.
of a strength, is I'm more involved in the individual. I do want to
Yep.
see them excel and grow and develop themselves as an individual and as a leader. And so that's why sometimes we have to be a little bit careful about saying this one person is a great leader and trying to copy what they do.
Yep.
There's things to learn from them for sure. But all of these individuals I've had the absolute privilege of talking to and asking questions and learning from them and talking with them about leadership. There is a consistent desire to see others succeed.
Mhm.
Some will do that by inspiration. Some will do that by simply implementing systems to make
Mhm.
it better. And some will share their expertise to inspire other people. There's just lots of different ways to do that. And that's the whole point. Find out what way you are contributing to the lives of the people around you and can lead them. And you're going to find success in whatever measure you choose to measure that.
Totally. I think, I don't know if this is one of the like strengths they would call it, but there's agreeableness. I
Yes.
find the people that are very high on that spectrum irritate me.
It has.
Um, because they say they're yes men or yes women. So they
Yeah.
say yes to everybody, but then there's no clear-cut system of what's okay and what's not okay. And so that's where I find there can be some issues.
Yes.
On the flip side, because we did talk about the positives, what is the most common blind spot leaders don't realize they have until someone reflects it back on them?
It's a great question. I think it's exactly what you just said. We
Mm,
all have our blind spots and we don't always recognize them. And so you get some leaders and individuals that will sometimes unintentionally and sometimes arrogantly, but most of the time it's unintentional. They don't realize that how they're coming across is bothersome to other people.
yeah.
And when you, as the leader, can create an environment, we call it a psychologically safe environment for that open exchange, you can accomplish some things by simply helping other people to understand, hey, this might be a little bit of a, you're seeing it this way, we're seeing it a different way.
Totally.
And as a leader, if you're willing to stay humble and be open-minded and listen to that feedback,
Hmm.
you'll learn about yourself. That was one of the big things. I'll tell just a very quick realization when I
Please.
went through the Strengths Finder myself, just to
Hmm.
use this example. One of my top five is includer.
Hmm.
And I tend to be the type of person that if I'm sitting in a meeting with, well, let's call it 5 or 6 people, I'll want to hear from each one of them. I want to
Yeah.
hear their perspective, and I will call on them, even if they don't volunteer. I'll ask them, hey, what do you think? What's your
Yeah.
opinion on this? What I found out through that process of the blind spots that we're talking about, I was viewing it as wanting to seek input from everybody.
Mm.
Others were perceiving it as an indecisive leader, as the leader who was trying to,
Interesting.
yeah, they were like,
Hmm.
Shawn, you're always trying to figure out what the most popular answer is. You won't make a decision. And
Yeah.
I'm sitting there going, huh, well, that's an interesting perspective. I never thought about that. But going through this Strengths Finder assessment and understanding what includer really means, that
Yeah.
helped me to understand that's why. So I've
Interesting.
had to kind of reframe that just a little bit when I get into that situation and just say, no, I've got
Hmm.
some ideas on what we want to do, but before I share mine, I'd like to hear from you.
Yeah.
And that way people kind of understand Shawn is thinking about this. He does have a solution, but
Yeah.
before he shares it, he wants to hear, because here's what will happen. If the leader shares their opinion,
Hmm.
as you mentioned a minute ago, you're going to have those agreeables, the yes people that are just
Yeah.
going to agree with it and say, oh, he's already made the decision. Shawn's already made the decision. We just got to go with it. And I don't want that to happen. And that's part of the reason why I value inclusion so much, is because I learn.
Totally.
Certainly, there are times when I've made the decision and we end up going with that decision, but there have also been times when I will hear something
Hmm.
from input that I receive that either changes my mind or changes how I'm going to explain it.
Mm.
Changes how I was like, okay, maybe we were still going to move this direction, but
Yeah.
maybe I need to kind of rephrase this a little bit on why we're doing it that way or explain it better so people understand. So it's just a simple example of what can happen when we understand ourselves and how we might be perceived.
Yep.
And when we can understand each other a lot better, we can communicate more effectively.
I think I'm like you in that way. Like, no one is left behind. Like, let's everyone get, but I also know that that can come with uncharted territory of like, whoa, I asked too much and now I have so much overwhelming information that now you don't want to become frozen or stuck in time with the decision that you need to
Right.
make. So sometimes maybe it's keeping two or three people that you deeply value their input that might be different from you, that can color your experience a little more. That and that's what I mean by building a team. For me, being a good leader is having those four or five people that you're really close to that are different, but that you've already worked that language through on how you both all perceive the world. And then they go out and action that for you with your boots on the ground and so on and so forth. Otherwise, the message sort of gets lost in translation.
Oh, you're exactly right. And the other risk that I
Mm,
have found by being that inclusive, hey, let me hear everybody's input, is that you know that you've got to make a decision, and you know
mhm.
that there's at least usually one or two or more
Don't want it.
that they don't like that idea. And now
Yeah.
you know who it is. And
Yeah.
now you know it's kind of like, okay, Alexa, I know I'm not quite on the same page with you here, but this is the direction I feel like we need to go.
Yeah.
And if a leader is functioning at a high level, which is kind of a loose term,
Hmm.
the people will understand that.
Yeah.
And they'll know, hey, somebody's got to make a decision. This is Shawn's responsibility to make the decision. He's going to make that
Totally.
decision, and I'll support it. But they appreciate being included in the discussion,
Hmm.
and they appreciate the opportunity to offer their ideas because they know, hey, this time Shawn disagreed with me, but maybe next time we'll be in agreement. And that's
100%.
just part of it.
What would you say with all the leaders you've observed? What's the difference between someone who leads mechanically and someone who leads in a way that feels magnetic, human, and deeply connecting?
Yeah, the mechanical approach, and this is where I have almost some inner conflict, you might say,
Hmm.
because I mentioned that I'm also very keen
Mm.
on consistency and systems so that you can basically be predictable to
Yeah.
people. They kind of know what to expect. We've got these approaches that we just kind of follow. But there is in
Hmm.
that very sense, there's a blind spot because individuals are different.
Hmm.
So I believe that the mechanical approach, if I were to define it this way,
Hmm.
it's where you're basically treating everybody exactly the same, which sounds good on the surface, but you also need to allow for a little bit of variation within tolerances there
Hmm.
to make sure you're not showing favoritism, but you're allowing people to have some flexibility within those parameters. And
Hmm.
that's not easy to do. And you have to really be thinking carefully about, okay, well, we have this system, we want to set precedent and
Hmm.
make good decisions, but we can always reevaluate the decisions and see if we need to do an update or something like that.
Hmm.
So I think that learning to understand people a little bit more and having that human side
Yeah.
and showing that and demonstrating empathy and genuine concern and compassion for people, that enables you to still use systems,
Hmm.
but not come across so robotic or mechanical, is how I would
Totally.
describe that.
Sort of into a little side story that ties into my next question. So, here's an example where you have a company that has built a reputation, has a big following of people that have been with them for years. So, the dynamic's been built. They sell the business. New leadership team takes over, very corporate. Okay. So, we went
Mhm.
from mom and pop to like corporation. Now they come in and they have different systems and procedures that they want to implement now. So this is where I'm going to wonder, what is that one invisible team dynamic that either strengthens trust or quietly erodes it? How would you approach that dynamic if you deeply valued the effect it was having to people that you were coming in and influencing?
So to make sure I'm understanding your question, the kind of that invisible missing piece in the
To
situation where
implement
you,
those systems. Yeah. How
yeah.
would you address that?
Well, I think we would have to examine what it is that we cannot see, that invisible part.
Hmm.
Is like, okay, I'm a big fan of open communication. I'd start asking some questions. I'd be
Hmm.
asking the team members. Now, most of the time, employees are more willing to talk to a third party that's more neutral than they are
Hmm.
to talk within the team, and that's
Hmm.
usually based on some historical things, some background things that have happened. And so I feel like in a lot of cases when I go into that situation, I'm able to ask the questions that may not always be comfortable for other
Hmm.
people to ask and answer in that kind of a dynamic. So for me to come in, it's relatively easy to say, okay, tell me a little bit about, and not that we're gossiping, but is there a concern here? Is there something that we're missing? And what can
Hmm.
you see? Because then I can provide and can kind of filter that message a little bit so it comes across in a more constructive way than it might coming from directly from the individual. But you can catch patterns when you talk to a number of employees on the same team. You start to learn things, and you can pass that
Hmm.
on to the boss or bosses and say, here's kind of what I'm observing from your people. Now go and communicate a little bit better. And
Yeah.
or here's a workshop and I can help facilitate that, and whatever the situation may require. But a lot of times there are assumptions being made
Hmm.
because everybody again brings their own perspective and background. So in this example that you used, you have this small town individual or maybe a small business type individual that's used to kind of fast action
Hmm.
and not having a lot of red tape, and then they step into a corporate position and it's very different, and it's a little bit of a shock to the system, and they're not used to that, and so that can create some miscommunication.
Hmm.
And because the other corporate folks are used to corporate thinking and they don't may not realize,
Hmm.
hey, we've got someone here that thinks a little bit differently. And again, that's why it's so important to have really good systems in place and an environment and a culture that allows for people to have open communication so they can say,
Hmm.
hey, I'm just a little confused here because this is how I'm used to doing things, but it looks like you guys do it differently. And quite frankly,
Hmm.
Alexa, that happens even if you're going from a corporate job to a different company, corporate
Yeah.
job or small to small. Anytime there's a change, you have to
Hmm.
kind of expect that there's going to be some surprises along the way, and that's from both parties. And that's just part of
100%.
the, in my opinion, the fun of job changes. There is figuring all that out.
And I think dealing with like the boots on the ground, the people that are going to be implementing these new systems, say with their interaction with other customers or guests or clients, they probably feel the most upheaval because you've taken their foundation and you've given it a big shake. And they go, oh my gosh, I don't know how to learn this overnight. And you get a lot of like, and voices and HR comments, and, it just can explode. So when you're trying to handle like a merger or a position where you're implementing a new system, I guess from what I'm gathering is being open to communicating, have a really clear onboarding process that makes people feel supported. Because I mean, I've been in situations where I've had both. And when
Mhm.
you don't have it, it feels like the worst day of your
Oh
job.
yeah, it's
You
painful.
know, it's very painful.
It's a physical pain too. It's not just up here. You're sick to your stomach,
Oh,
headaches,
yeah, it's
all that
visceral.
stuff. Oh yeah, I can only imagine. And I think some of it, when you if you're in that situation where like a merger or something like that, where
Hmm.
there's some pretty dramatic change,
Hmm.
anticipation as best possible, that's really important. You've got to anticipate, hey, how are these individuals going to feel?
Hmm.
What are going to be their questions that they're going to have? What are the concerns that they're going to have? You may not be able to get to all of them, of course, but you do the
Hmm.
best you can to anticipate. If nothing else, that shows the parties involved that you care, that you're trying.
Hmm.
And that goes a long way and creates that dialogue, that opportunity for more dialogue, for people to say, well, this sounds like they're really trying to understand. They may have overlooked this one idea. Let me bring it up to them. And
Hmm.
that's how you manage these things. It sounds easy. It can be very difficult depending on the people and the dynamics and the
Absolutely.
companies and money and all these other things that kind of muddy the waters. But whittled down to its simplicity, it's just simply being comfortable enough to communicate ideas with each other.
Yeah. Would you say then when you consult leaders, do they typically come to you or do you come to them? How does that work within your business?
Well, within mine, they're mostly coming to me because
Hmm.
they are interested in development. Because
Hmm.
again, I'm working more on the signature part. I don't get as much anymore
Hmm.
into the weeds of the operational part of being a leader. I simply teach the skills. However, I remain available just as a one
Hmm.
on one individual coach to help them with a particular situation if
Hmm.
it comes up. But most of the time, it's more me kind of just providing direction and then responding as necessary if there's a
Hmm.
question about how to apply a principle.
Well, that makes sense. Like this is a perfect time to transition, I think, into the business side, like the part people rarely talk about that determines the long-term sustainability of like a coaching or consulting practice. So as Blue Sky Consulting has grown from one-to-one work to assessments, peer advisory boards, leadership tools, and your executive program, what's been the biggest bottleneck for you in terms of capacity, or would you say it's just the time to get to all those things? Because I don't know about you, but even just doing 8 podcasts a month, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, where do you get the time to edit them all?
It's that's a great question. And so, as I'm thinking about the question, I don't know how many people will remember the movie National Treasure.
Nicolas
I
Cage?
can't remember. It's the first. Do you remember it, or have you
I,
maybe
I I vaguely remember that. I know the name. Yeah.
you know the name? Okay,
Yeah.
so Nicolas Cage is
Yep.
and there's a scene where they're trying to balance on this, and it's not a teeter-totter two-directional. It's a big platform that's moving
Yep.
in multiple directions, and they're trying to balance on this thing. This
Mm.
group of them. And I I remember when I first saw
That's
that
awesome.
thinking, that's how life is. It's never just balanced this way or this way. That's relatively easy to strike a
It's a
balance here.
seesaw in every
Oh
direction.
yeah, when you're
Yeah.
moving all different directions, trying to balance everything within a
Mm.
business, and you're zooming out here, you're
Mhm.
balancing your business with family, personal interests, any other things that are in your life, that can
Mhm.
be really tricky. And so for me, going back now to just the business, you're right. When you're a solopreneur and you have a small team, but it's still pretty much you that's running the show,
Yep.
you are trying to figure out, okay, how do I make sure I've got some lead generation going? How do I make
Mhm.
sure I'm having good communication? How am I making sure I'm fulfilling in an efficient way? And how am I making sure I still keep my voice out there, which is exactly why you and I are doing what we're doing right
Yep.
now. It's an opportunity to continue to give back. That's how I view these, as to give back some of the
Mhm.
experience and the knowledge that I've been blessed to receive all these years
Totally.
and share it with people,
Mhm.
hopefully in an effort to help them have a better experience in leadership.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, you got the mechanical things like you got to pay the bills, and you got to make sure that the bills are not just getting paid, but your invoices are being paid by the client, and all these little
Mhm.
things.
And
And
remembering to eat all at the same time, you
that's
know?
right. And you have
Yeah.
to kind of figure out, okay, do
Yeah.
I budget some time once a week for X activity, whatever it is,
Yeah.
probably, but
Exactly.
it's tricky. It's tricky.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely can relate to that. You've personally built a model that blends structure with personal connection. So what parts of your business feel natural and energizing, and what parts do you think still feel heavy or overly manual behind the scenes?
It's a great question. There is still a need, because I'm using assessments, to
Mm-hmm.
go through the steps of
Yeah.
actually issuing the assessment. Okay, click here, go log in here, take the
Yeah.
assessment. I need to review. I get more energy, of course, when I'm sitting down one on one with
Going
the
over the
individual.
results or
Yeah, to go
yeah.
over the results. That's where it gets exciting.
Yeah.
And so, in those moments where I'm feeling like I got to go through the mechanical part of this, I
Mm-hmm.
have to kind of remember in my mind there's an end of the rainbow here that I'm pursuing, and
Mm-hmm.
that's to be able to sit down and have a great conversation. Because sometimes, you work with a client, and some of them are more proactive than others, and sometimes you say, okay, take this assessment by the end of the week, and it's a Monday, and they haven't done it by Friday afternoon or Saturday, whatever, and you have to follow up with them. That gets a bit tedious.
Yep.
But that's just part of the gig, and I accept it,
Yeah.
and that's okay. And that helps me understand them just a little bit more, because sometimes, not often, but sometimes it's kind of a why is this taking so long? Are you busy, or is this just not important to
Mm-hmm.
you? And to try and take it one level further. But yeah, there's no question that for me, they're just, I
Mm-hmm.
love people, and I love to be able to sit down and, as I mentioned earlier, have those light bulbs go on and have them realize, hey, there's some cool things about me that I can
Mm-hmm.
share with the world. And it's not in an arrogant way, because that's one of the
Yeah.
great things about an assessment, is that it's kind of a scientific approach to allow you, it gives you
Mm-hmm.
permission to share who you are in a very authentic way without feeling like you're bragging about yourself.
Absolutely. And I think even if you do that natural self-assessment of like, what tasks do I put off versus what do I
Yes,
actually love to dive into tells you a lot about who you
that's
are as a
exactly right.
leader in your business.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't have to go through these formal assessments. You can kind
Yeah.
of just exactly, I thought that was I love that you said that, Alexa, because
Mhm.
that's exactly what people can do, is just
Mhm.
look through your calendar for the past week or two, list off all the activities, and put a
Yeah.
little energy score next to it, high
That's a good
energy,
way to do
low
that.
energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an easy way to kind of
Mm.
determine what you like and what you don't like. And then one step further, why? Why did I like this exercise or this activity so much, or
Yeah.
why did I not like it? And that gives you a good head start on what it is that you like and don't like, and
Yeah.
what you're good at.
It's funny you use the calendar as a reference because I want to shy away from even looking at mine. I'm not very apt to scheduling and to being on it. I don't like to say I can't. I can't yet,
Can't
but
yet.
getting there.
But yeah,
It's a pain in the ass.
and that's the funny part, is that I kind of like it, because again, I'm a
Yeah.
systems guy, and that's
Yeah.
one of my systems is, and I've got it, we can't show it here, but it's
Yeah.
right off the second screen here. I've got my calendar, and it's just
Love
right
it.
there in front of me. And it's like, okay, I've got this podcast coming up at 2 o'clock. And then I've got,
Hmm.
because what I do is I call what's called block scheduling, where I say, okay, if I've got something that needs to get done,
Yep.
I need to prepare this or create a slide deck, whatever. I block it off and I say, okay,
Yep.
give myself 2 hours for that. That's my to-do list. And so I fill up my calendar doing that.
Yep.
And so for me, that's my system of being organized. You obviously, that's not your thing. And so it's a pain in
Here's
the
the thing
rear.
though, I thrive in that arena, but it's building said system that I'm like, womp womp womp. I'm
See,
lucky I
that's
have a good business partner that's really good at showing what time blocking is and how to introduce it to your life. And
yeah,
it's
exactly.
funny because there's been businesses made just on platforms alone of designing that for people like
Yeah,
me that don't want to build them.
they
Yeah.
don't. Yep, they don't.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of where we're at in our society and the technological advances that we've made is that
Hmm.
there is a tool out there to help everybody with those
Hmm.
blind spots, those areas that they just don't want to deal with in their life. There's usually a
Exactly.
way to kind of help you navigate that a lot easier than just muscling it out on your own.
100%. When it comes to marketing or nurturing leads, follow up, what we talked about with appointment setting and building those systems, what responsibilities do you think still sit too firmly on your shoulders?
Oh, I would say the lead gen, the lead
Yeah.
generation and the sales part of it. But it's so difficult because I've thought about outsourcing a lot of that. And this is probably a blind spot for me personally, to be honest with you,
Mm.
Alexa. And that is because I'm a people person and I'm careful about who I engage with as a
Yeah.
client, because I won't engage with everybody if I don't think that they're willing to engage themselves and I can sense that
Mhm.
early on. I won't
I'm
proceed
glad you're
with
here.
them. Yeah, it's like, well, nice to meet you. Have a
Yeah.
nice day. But there is a point where you have to say, okay, in order to bring in clients consistently,
Hmm.
I need to have more of a system in place that probably excludes me from that, where
Hmm.
the leads are just kind of coming in, and I might still do the sales,
Yeah.
but at some point, and this is a delegation principle for the whole audience here, you have to be willing to let go. If you're going to delegate and grow and scale your business,
Hmm.
have to be willing to let go of things, and that means you usually have to take time to train somebody and help them understand why it
Exactly.
is that you make those
Yeah.
decisions the way that you do.
Hmm.
Give them the guardrails about what you're not negotiable on, but give them the freedom within those guardrails so that they can make decisions and not be always trying
Totally.
to outguess the boss. That doesn't work. But that's for me. That's probably the biggest challenge is trying to keep some steady consistency. I'll use that word to
Hmm.
always be talking to people.
I wasn't planning on asking this question, but since you brought up delegating, because yes, you could say, hey, this person has said skill, I'm just going to push it off to them. But before you do that, to avoid coming back and going, oh my gosh, you're doing it that way, what kind of conversation do you need to have to make sure that you're in alignment before you delegate said task?
Excellent question, and this comes up a lot
Hmm.
because that's what will exactly what you described is what will happen. People will say,
Hmm.
"Oh, Sean's good at this. Just give him that, and he'll take care of it." And I will my
Hmm.
way.
Yeah,
And then they
exactly.
find, "Oh, that's not quite the way we'd intended." What I
Mm.
have found in most cases, when you have this misalignment that you're talking about, it's because things like the vision and the mission and the values and the purpose have
Hmm.
not been effectively communicated to the person you're delegating to. And that can't always happen at the moment that you delegate it. That has to be understood and it has to be part of your culture, whether it's the team or the company culture,
Hmm.
to understand, hey, this is the direction that we're going and this is why we're doing it and this is
Hmm.
what drives us. These are our core values and so on and so forth. When a person understands those, they're
Hmm.
better equipped to make decisions that are in alignment with those values. Because now it's not, well, gee, Sean's not doing this the right way. It's, is Sean in alignment with everything that we do? Because then you empower that person. Sean is now capable of making a lot more decisions that are going to be in alignment because he
Hmm.
understands those principles deeply
Hmm.
and he understands this is what it means. This is what it means to have. I throw out integrity. It's actually one of my least favorite core values. And I need to explain that because it sounds like, oh, Sean's okay with dishonesty. No, it's that integrity is a very, very broad term that could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And that's why it's like, you gotta drill down, get
Hmm.
that more finite, get that more clear in everybody's mind. So everybody knows when we say integrity, we know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot to that. We could go on all day just on that one point.
Yeah.
But delegation, that's why delegating is so hard for a lot of people, is
Hmm.
because it's hard to help the person receiving the assignment to really understand
Hmm.
the proper alignment and providing the guardrails, making sure that they communicate. The other part that's important with delegating as the leader is to make sure you check in fairly regularly.
Hmm.
And you've got to work that out with the individual. Hey, Alexa, I'm giving this to you. Do you want me to check in with you weekly on this project just to make sure we stay on task here and that we're aligned properly?
Hmm.
Some of it depends on how new the person is. Is this a new relationship for you? There's a lot of elements to it, but that's the core.
So would you say then to any founders that are listening, when they start to scale, it's very important that they build a team around their values and their principles. Like, hey, look at past products, look at what we've delivered. We want to maintain that because I
Yes,
feel like the higher up you are in a company, it's not that you're doing less, you're managing more.
that's
So
correct.
you're managing more, but you're managing more as far as the execution of said values and structure.
That's
So,
exactly right. Yeah, when you're in a larger company, and that, it's hard to even define that, what that might mean. I would
hmm.
say probably 50 employees or more. You
Hmm.
become less, or I should say more detached, less connected, more detached from those individuals that are meeting directly with the client.
Yep.
And so if you have a strong belief system and core values on how you want interactions with the client to go, you have to communicate that and you have to make sure that it's clearly understood on the receiving end. You have to
Hmm.
model that out, role play it, whatever you need to do to help make sure that that's really communicated effectively, or it may not go as well.
Totally. When you imagine the next evolution of Blue Sky Business Consulting, what does the future version of your business look like?
I see a lot more people going through the sequence that I've
Hmm.
talked about and understanding what their true leadership signature is, and a development system that will help them
Hmm.
accelerate their leadership growth. And big vision here, I see a world where people are interacting more effectively. Leaders are leading high performing teams, which in and of itself needs to be clearly defined. But people are happier with the work that
Hmm.
they're involved in. They're getting along with their colleagues, they're getting along with their bosses and their supervisors and so forth. And everybody is producing and innovating and creating and contributing in meaningful ways. That's really what drives me, and that's what I want. I want
Hmm.
everybody to feel like, hey, I can contribute in this environment and be successful.
I love it. You can tell it's a passion of yours. So when you are led by that level of curiosity, connection to possibility, I think the sky's the limit there.
It very much is.
Hence the name, right?
That's right. And I love that you're using the word curiosity
Mhm.
because we all have it.
Yep.
And something happens as we go through school, especially, and it kind of gets dormant a little bit. One of the questions I asked a couple of years ago was how to basically spark curiosity in your team. How do you do that?
Ooh.
And to revive that, because we all have it. And that's where problem solving and innovation and new ideas come from, is
Hmm.
from that sense of how can I make this better and what other things can we do? That curiosity has to be there. So I love that you focus on that.
Ooh, I like that approach because then you're making them feel connected to the bigger picture
Yes.
with the
Yes.
business and the vision of where it's going and feeling like, hey, I had a part in that.
That's
I
right.
really did.
It
Yeah.
doesn't matter what department you're in. Some people think that it's the
Hmm.
R&D department that does all the innovating, and I'm like, no, 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 no. Look for a way to improve a system. It may be a small thing. It may not be a whole new
Hmm.
product, but it's amazing how many new products that we talked about technology earlier.
Hmm.
How many people are trying to solve a problem within their little ecosystem, their
Hmm.
job, that turns into a product that they go off and become an entrepreneur and start their own business, and that one thing that they're trying to innovate becomes a big thing. I mean, that happens all
Amazing.
the time.
That's awesome. You know,
Yes.
this is from another podcast I was listening to, but they were quoting Terry Crews, and he said, I do everything like I'm getting paid $1 million. And when he was a janitor, before he became this famous actor, he was like, I mopped those floors like I was mopping them and they were going to pay me $1 million at the end. So that's sort of the approach I take. And with my
I love
style
it.
is I want to influence your genius, whatever that looks like. Like, let's make you so excited to do that that you're willing to put out, X amount of effort, but that you feel rewarded doing it. Because I think what we forget is no matter where we are in the world or what our role is in a company, we still have the ability to go out every day and shape our day. and
Yes,
how we interact with people. And that's what I find particularly rewarding about most jobs I've done.
no, I agree completely. And I
Mhm.
love that quote from Terry Crews. He's a fun guy. I've never met
He
him, of course,
is.
but
I've never met him either, but
he
very
always
cool.
has this happy glow, doesn't he?
He does. He does.
But that's a
As
great attitude, you know?
exactly, but attitude is everything, honestly.
It
It's
is.
the approach and the choices we have available to us versus a closed mindset. So, as this landscape of leadership continues to shift, let's say AI, remote teams, emotional labor, generational expectations, where do you see the leadership development space heading, and how are you preparing for that shift?
It's interesting because I've had this conversation with several folks now over the last
Mm-hmm.
month or two about AI and how it's affecting work and
Mm-hmm.
society and everything else. If I were to be bold, I would, and I'm not even sure I'm that bold in this statement. I don't think it's a bold statement. AI is going to change a lot of things. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think leadership is one of them. I think it will help us,
Yeah.
but we're always going to be with each other. People
Mm-hmm.
are always going to be with people. People are always going to need strong leadership and confident leadership. That's just the nature of human beings.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we do that better? And AI can help us a little bit with that, but
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, as we're going through some of these generational changes where each generation brings a slightly different approach to
Mm-hmm.
work and life in general, how can we do that? That's part of the reason why I love what I do, because I want to help, especially emerging leaders, the younger leaders. I
Mm-hmm.
really want them to capture this whole idea of every individual can contribute
Yeah.
and understand yourself and how you contribute as a leader. And then let's go empower everybody else, because as we move through the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years and beyond,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to need leaders that know how to do that effectively and empower their people to do the same thing. That's how we're going to navigate all of this. AI
Mm-hmm.
technology will come and go. There will be things that we advance, things that we retract, all sorts of things. People are going to be the one constant through all of it.
Totally. And leaning into the space of what opportunities do these tools present to me now, and how can I make my people better with them?
Yes. Oh, I love how you said that. How
Hmm.
can I make the people better with them? Yep.
Hmm. I think to close, Shawn, I want to ask a couple more questions that pull us deeper into the layers of who you are. What is one belief about leadership you have held early in your career that you've completely outgrown?
Outgrown. Well, I think I'll go back to what we started with, was the idea that there was one way or person that
Mm.
or description of what a leader is, or an effective leader, and I've tried to really embrace the idea that everybody can contribute and lead in a different way, and everyone can be successful. And I've really distanced myself from the idea that there is kind of a one size fits all for leadership. And so
Mhm.
that's probably the one thing that I've distanced more than anything else.
I love that. Last question for you. With all the leaders that you've supported, from the emerging managers to seasoned executives, even people like me in this episode right now, what advice would you give to someone that looks successful on the outside but quietly feels a little unsure about their ability to lead or execute?
Great question. Learn about yourself and learn about people in general. That's really the short of it. And for
Hmm.
some, it may be okay to accept that you lead in a way that doesn't always have to be people facing.
Hmm.
Sometimes we have leaders that are the quiet experts that aren't always at the forefront or in the spotlight all the time. They're not the ones leading the meetings. They may be the experts that are just the quiet, wise old sage that has a lot of knowledge or experience about something. They lead in a different kind of way. And so that's part of the process, is to learn about yourself. And I
Hmm.
think that that may even evolve over time, over a person's lifetime. As I get a little bit older, I'm entering that stage where I'm wanting to give back more than I'm wanting to necessarily learn more. I still learn, don't get me wrong,
Hmm.
but I want to help others. And so I think that there is that sense of wanting to give back and give it back and pay it forward and all those kinds of phrases. But yeah, I think always being curious about yourself and what's next on the horizon, and being curious about others. There are always going to be things that leaders can do better.
I love that. And you know what? You just instilled another question here for me,
Sure.
because I'm curious. You get people who listen to the advice, understand how it affects them, understand themselves, and okay, I'm more like this. But how do you get it to become actionable? Like there's people that understand, but they don't portray or they don't live into. So, what advice would you have to
Yeah.
that?
It's that's a great question. I'm going to use a phrase. I don't know if I coined the phrase or not. I really don't.
Ooh,
I've used it a
interested.
lot. I
Yeah.
may have heard it somewhere. So if this belongs to somebody else, forgive me. But I use the phrase have humility to learn
Hmm.
and courage to act. And they're two separate things, but they're
Hmm.
very much connected. A lot of us, quite frankly, we lack the humility to learn. But when we embrace it, and we say, okay, there's something about me that I want to learn about, or I want to
Hmm.
implement in my life, you have the humility to learn it and you understand it up here.
Hmm.
Now you got to get the hands to work for you. And that takes some courage. That means setting goals. That means making changes that sometimes aren't comfortable to make. But another phrase that is common, I know this is not one that I made up, uh, but you cannot grow in a comfort zone and
Mm.
you cannot be
Hmm.
comfortable in a growth zone. So if you're growing, you're probably going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And if you are comfortable, you're probably not growing. And so be willing to be brave, be willing to be courageous, and just make a few changes. Don't overdo it, or you'll be like that person that wants to lose 30 pounds in 2 weeks. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for sustained growth over a period of time. So patience is important,
Hmm.
and just be willing to learn and then put into action what you learn a little bit at a time.
I love that. You reminded me of a quote very similar that says, if you do what is easy, your life will be difficult. And if you do what is difficult, your life will be easy.
Oh, I like that. I've not heard that one. That's a great one.
Yeah. I really, really like that. I think that's a good place for us to close, Shawn. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. And for
Thank
anyone
you.
who wants to learn more about Shawn and his consulting work, his executive program, or his book, Rapid Fire Leadership, all the links will be in the show notes. Thanks again.
Thanks, Alexa.